The vote counter displayed the final numbers across every screen in the chamber. Resolution 4471 had passed by a margin that left no room for debate. 832 species voted yes. Only 74 voted no. The rest abstained, which meant they agreed but wanted to avoid blame later. Ambassador David Cross watched the numbers without changing his expression. He had seen this coming for months. The whispers in hallways, the closed-door meetings he was not invited to, the way certain delegates avoided eye contact when discussing emergency protocols. 50 years of human dedication meant nothing when politics entered the conversation. The chamber held representatives from over 900 civilized species. Some breathed oxygen like humans. Others lived in specialized environment suits filled with methane or chlorine gas. A few existed as energy patterns contained in crystalline matrices. All of them had benefited from human emergency services at some point. All of them voted to take that authority away. Council Chair Oral rose from his elevated seat. His species resembled earth mantises but stood 3 meters tall. His ceremonial robes shifted colors as he moved, a sign of his elevated status. He clicked his mandibles twice before speaking, a gesture that demanded attention. The vote is concluded. Resolution 4471 is now council law. Humanity will retain observer status, but all emergency response authority is transferred to the Central Council Emergency Directorate effective immediately. David stepped forward to the speaking platform. Every eye, lens, and sensory organ in the chamber focused on him. He placed both hands on the podium and spoke clearly. The United Nations of Earth accepts this decision. We will comply fully with Resolution 4471. All human emergency response vessels will withdraw from Council space within 72 hours. All ongoing operations will be transferred to Council authority. We will honor our contracts and commitments until the moment of transfer, then we will depart. Oral's antennae twitched. He had expected anger or at least an appeal. You have no protest to register. No protest. This is your decision to make. We respect the sovereignty of the Galactic Council. Councillor Brent, a Talvari with 4 long arms and smooth gray skin, stood from his seat. Ambassador Cross, surely Earth wishes to negotiate the terms, perhaps a transition period of several months. David shook his head. You voted that our emergency services are not needed. We believe you. 72 hours is generous for a withdrawal. We could leave today if you prefer. A murmur rippled through the chamber. This was not how these things usually went. Species typically fought such resolutions. They bargained and delayed. They made speeches about partnership and mutual respect. David did none of these things. Why so quick to abandon your duties? Asked Oral, his voice carrying an edge of suspicion. We are not abandoning anything. You are relieving us of duties you now consider beyond our authority. We simply accept your judgment. If the Council believes it can handle emergency response better without human involvement, then we trust that assessment. We will focus our efforts on protecting our own territories and allies who specifically request our help. The chamber fell silent. Several delegates exchanged glances. A few began checking their data tablets, suddenly concerned about what this might mean for their home systems. David continued. For 50 years, human crews responded to every crisis anywhere in Council space. We did not ask for payment beyond operating costs. We did not demand political favors. We helped because people needed help. But if the Council has determined this relationship is no longer beneficial, we will not force ourselves where we are not wanted. He pulled a small data chip from his uniform pocket and placed it on the podium. This contains all transfer protocols, equipment inventories, and ongoing operation details. The Central Council Emergency Directorate will find everything they need to continue operations. We wish you success. Oral picked up the chip with one of his forearms. You are being remarkably cooperative. We are being respectful. This is your government. These are your laws. We will follow them precisely." David turned to leave the speaking platform. As he walked toward the exit, Counselor Brent called out, "What will happen to the rescue teams currently deployed?" David paused and looked back. "They will return home, every ship, every medical team, every disaster response crew, every fire suppression unit, every search and rescue group, all of them. You voted that you do not need them, so they will stop offering help you apparently do not want." "But the situation on Hellion 7, Brent protested. 3,000 miners are trapped. Your team is 12 hours away from reaching them." "Our team will transfer all data to your emergency directorate and withdraw. I am sure your people will handle it competently. After all, that is why you passed this resolution, to handle these situations yourselves." A reptilian delegate from the Corinth species stood up. "This is manipulative. You know our response systems are not as developed as yours." David stopped walking and turned to face the chamber fully. His voice remained calm, but his words cut deep. "Then perhaps you should have considered that before voting to remove our authority. We offered partnership. You chose independence. We are simply giving you what you asked for." He left through the main doors without waiting for a response. Behind him, the chamber erupted into arguments. Some delegates demanded the vote be reconsidered immediately. Others insisted humanity was bluffing and would never actually withdraw. A few sat in silence, beginning to realize what they had done. In orbit around the Council homeworld, Commander Lisa Barnes received the recall order on her tablet. She read it 3 times to make sure she understood correctly. Then she opened communications to every human vessel in Council space. "All units, this is Barnes. Execute Withdrawal Protocol Alpha. 72-hour timeline. Transfer all active operations to Council authority and return to designated human territories. Acknowledge." One by one, responses came back. Medical frigates treating plague victims, rescue ships saving miners, fire suppression teams containing station blazes, diplomatic protection details, science expedition support vessels. All of them received the same order. All of them acknowledged and began preparations to leave. On the disaster response carrier Mercy, a young ensign approached Barnes with a troubled expression. "Commander, we are scheduled to reach Hellion 7 in 11 hours. If we withdraw now, those miners will die." Barnes looked at the tactical display showing their current mission. Then she looked at the recall order. "Transfer all mining tunnel maps and rescue plans to the Talvery Emergency Services. Send them everything we have. Then plot a course back to human space." "But Commander—" "Those are our orders, Ensign. The Council has decided they do not need our help. We will respect that decision." The ensign saluted and returned to his station. Barnes watched the countdown timer. 72 hours until every human rescue vessel left Council space. 50 years of service ending because politicians feared human influence more than they valued human dedication. She wondered how long it would take before they realized their mistake. 14 days passed since the last human emergency vessel left Council space. Counselor Brent sat in his office reviewing casualty reports that made his 4 hands shake with anger and grief. Hellion 7 claimed 2,873 lives. The Talvery rescue teams arrived 6 days after the collapse. By then, oxygen had run out in the deepest tunnels. The survivors, barely 300 miners, suffered severe injuries that human medical teams could have treated easily. Instead, they waited in makeshift hospitals while Talvery doctors struggled with equipment they barely understood how to operate. Brent had voted against Resolution 4471. He remembered standing in the Council chamber trying to explain why removing human authority was foolish. Nobody listened. They were too afraid of human influence growing stronger, too worried about Earth gaining more power in Council politics. Now his own people paid the price for that fear. His communication console chimed. Another emergency, this time from the agricultural world of Besson 4, a plague outbreak spreading through the population, medical teams requesting immediate assistance. Brent checked the response time estimates. The closest council medical ship was 11 days away. A human medical frigate could have been there in 30 hours. He closed his eyes and authorized the deployment anyway, knowing it would be too late for thousands of victims. The pattern repeated across council space like a virus. Station fires burned longer because suppression teams took days to arrive instead of hours. Pirate attacks succeeded because human patrol ships no longer enforced security in remote sectors. Mining accidents became massacres. Medical emergencies became epidemics. Every species in the council maintained some emergency response capability, but they had let those systems weaken over the decades. Why maintain expensive rescue fleets when humans would handle it for free? Why train specialized medical teams when human doctors were always available? Why build disaster response infrastructure when Earth provided it as a public service? The Vrellan Stellar Navy tried to fill the gap. They had ships and trained crews, but their expertise was military combat, not civilian rescue. Their commanders knew how to fight wars, not coordinate evacuations or treat mass casualties. They did their best. Their best was not enough. In the council chamber, emergency session followed emergency session. Delegates stood and made speeches demanding action. Others made speeches defending the resolution. Nothing changed except the body count. Ambassador David Cross appeared occasionally on communication screens when council members contacted Earth directly. His responses never varied. Humanity respected the council's decision. Resolution 4471 removed human emergency authority. Earth would not violate council law by deploying rescue services where they had no legal standing. Some delegates called it manipulation. Others called it abandonment. A few honest ones called it exactly what humans promised to do. Meanwhile, in human-controlled space, life continued smoothly. A cargo ship suffered engine failure near the Mars Transit Station. Human rescue tugs arrived in 40 minutes. A research outpost on Titan detected a methane leak. Emergency teams sealed it in 3 hours. A medical crisis on the lunar colonies got treated by specialists who arrived before symptoms became critical. The difference was impossible to ignore. Refugees began flowing toward human territories. First a trickle, then a flood. Families who could afford transport. Businesses relocating operations. Scientists abandoning council research stations for safer positions in Earth-sponsored facilities. The exodus created another crisis. Border stations became overwhelmed. Human immigration services worked around the clock processing applications. Some species Earth welcomed immediately. Others required negotiation and bilateral agreements. A few council loyalists were politely turned away. Brent watched the refugee numbers climb and felt ashamed. His own species, the Tal'Vari, were prominent among those seeking safety in human space. They remembered how human teams saved Tal'Vari lives during the Crystal Plague outbreak 20 years ago. They remembered human engineers rebuilding their orbital infrastructure after the meteor strikes. They remembered partnership and trust. The council leadership remembered only fear and pride. 3 weeks after the withdrawal, a crisis emerged that truly tested council capability. The mining platform at Talley's Gate experienced catastrophic decompression. 12,000 workers from 6 different species were trapped in damaged sections, losing atmosphere fast. The nearest council rescue ships were 4 days away. Talley's Gate would be a tomb long before they arrived. Councillor Brent stood in the emergency session and made a proposal that caused uproar. Contact Earth. Request immediate assistance under emergency humanitarian protocol. Absolutely not, Oral declared, his mandibles clicking rapidly. We will not beg humanity for help. We will handle this ourselves. 12,000 people will die if we handle this ourselves, Brent shouted back. Is your pride worth their lives? Other delegates joined the argument. Some supported Brent, most supported Oral. The debate consumed precious hours while people died at Tally's gate. Finally, Oral agreed to a compromise. The council would contact Earth, but only to request paid assistance. Not as partners, not as allies, as contractors. Payment in full, market rates, no political considerations. The message went to Earth's diplomatic corps. David Cross reviewed it and sent back a simple response. The United Nations appreciates the Council's business inquiry. However, Resolution 4471 explicitly removes human authority to conduct emergency operations in Council space. We cannot violate your own laws, even for payment. We recommend you contact private emergency contractors. We understand several Vrelin companies offer such services. Brent read the response and wanted to scream. David was technically correct. Resolution 4471 made it illegal for human government services to operate in Council territory. Private companies could, but human emergency services were government-run. They did not work for profit. Oral tried the private contractor route. 3 Vrelin companies bid on the Tally's Gate rescue. All of them quoted response times over 70 hours. All of them required payment up front. All of them included liability waivers for potential casualties. None of them could save the 12,000 people currently dying. The Council deployed what resources they had. They saved 4,000. 8,000 bodies floated in the wreckage when recovery teams finally arrived. The news broadcasts showed the corpses. They showed the destroyed platform. They showed grief-stricken families demanding answers. They showed Ambassador David Cross expressing sympathy and condolences. They showed him explaining again that humans were simply following Council law. Protests erupted across Council space, not against humans, against the Council itself. Citizens demanded the resolution be reversed. They demanded their governments prioritize lives over politics. They demanded someone take responsibility for the catastrophe. Brent walked through the Council building hallways and heard the shouting from outside. Thousands of protesters surrounded the complex. Some carried signs with casualty numbers. Others displayed images of dead children from Besson 4. A few burned effigies of Council Chair Oral. He found David Cross's contact information in his files. He sent a private message, not through official channels, just one old colleague to another. How many more must die before you help us? The response came within minutes. How many more must die before you admit you were wrong? The Solar Observatory detected the flare 3 days before impact. The readings were catastrophic. A massive coronal ejection heading directly toward Greenhalo, an agricultural world with 40 million inhabitants, mostly farmers and food processing workers. Families who had lived there for generations growing crops that fed 12 systems. The flare would strip away the atmosphere in the exposed hemisphere. Anyone caught outside would die instantly. Anyone inside without proper shielding would follow within hours from radiation exposure. The planet had no natural protection. Its weak magnetic field made it perfect for farming but useless against stellar radiation. Evacuation was the only option. 40 million people needed to leave the planet in 72 hours. The Council assigned the Vrelin Stellar Navy to coordinate the operation. Admiral Cross, a decorated military officer with 4 campaigns worth of experience, took command. He had fought in 2 wars and never lost a major engagement. Evacuating civilians should have been simple compared to combat operations. It was not simple. The Vrelin Navy had 600 transport ships available. Each could carry approximately 20,000 people if packed beyond safety limits. That was enough capacity. Barely. But capacity meant nothing without proper coordination. Cross's first mistake was dividing evacuation zones by geographic region instead of population density. 3 zones had more people than assigned ships. 2 zones had excess capacity. By the time anyone noticed the error, people were already moving toward designated pickup points. His second mistake was using military communication protocols instead of civilian emergency channels. Families did not understand military code. Confusion spread faster than information. Rumors filled the gaps. Some people thought they had 3 days. Others thought they had 3 hours. Panic began building. His third mistake was assigning young officers with combat training, but zero civilian experience to manage the ground operations. They shouted orders like they were commanding soldiers. Civilians did not respond well to being screamed at by people who threatened to leave them behind if they did not move faster. On the ground, chaos turned into catastrophe. At Evacuation Zone 7, 60,000 people arrived to find only 2 transport ships. The crowd surrounded the vessels, pushing and shoving to get aboard. Children got separated from parents. Elderly citizens fell and were trampled. The Vrelin officers activated crowd control barriers that shocked people who pressed too close. That made everything worse. One transport ship departed half empty because the loading officer panicked and sealed the doors. The other stayed too long trying to pack everyone aboard and damaged its landing struts under the excessive weight. It managed to lift off but could not reach orbital velocity. The ship crashed 40 kilometers away, killing all 12,000 people inside. At Evacuation Zone 12, 3 transport ships sat completely empty because nobody told the local population where to go. The officers waited at the designated coordinates while thousands of families remained in their homes, unaware they needed to move. By the time someone established communication, the flare was 18 hours away. The ships managed to save 20,000. 300,000 died in their houses, sheltering in basements that offered no protection against stellar radiation. The worst failures happened in orbit. The Vrelin Navy established a processing station to organize departing ships and ensure orderly flow away from the planet. It worked in theory. In practice, it created a massive bottleneck. Ships waited hours for clearance to depart while the solar flare approached. Some captains ignored the protocols and left anyway. Others followed orders and waited. Several collisions occurred in the confusion. Admiral Cross sat in his command center watching the disaster unfold across multiple screens. Every decision he made seemed to create new problems. He requested additional ships. They arrived too late. He simplified the protocols. That caused different confusion. He deployed additional officers. They contradicted each other. 30 hours before impact, he sent an emergency request to the Council. Situation critical. Request immediate assistance from experienced civilian evacuation specialists. The Council had no such specialists. Humans were the evacuation specialists. Humans handled every major civilian crisis for 50 years. The institutional knowledge existed only in their databases. Databases the Council had access to, but nobody bothered to study. Counselor Brent watched the Green Hello evacuation through live feeds and felt sick. He recognized the mistakes because he remembered watching human teams conduct similar operations. They used population density maps. They employed civilian liaisons who spoke calmly and clearly. They staged ships in multiple waves instead of one massive deployment. They had protocols for everything because they learned from decades of experience. The Vrelin were learning those lessons in real time, while millions of lives hung in the balance. 24 hours before impact, the evacuation was 70% complete. 28 million people safely off the planet, 12 million still waiting. The transports could not possibly get them all in time. Brent contacted David Cross directly, breaking every diplomatic protocol. "We need help. 12 million people are going to die. I am begging you." David's face on the screen showed no satisfaction, no smugness, just tiredness. "Counselor, you know I cannot help. Resolution 4471 makes it illegal for human emergency services to operate in Council space. If I deploy our evacuation fleet to Green Hello, the Council could charge Earth with violating galactic law. Then let them charge you, let them prosecute, just save those people. And what happens the next time there is a crisis? The Council learns that if enough people die, humans will ignore your laws and fix your problems. You never learn to solve issues yourselves. You never build the systems you should have maintained. You just wait for humans to rescue you. Brent wanted to argue but could not find words. David was right. The Council let their emergency infrastructure decay. They assumed humans would always be there. They never considered what would happen if that assumption proved false. "Those are real people dying," Brent said quietly. "I know, and I grieve for every one of them, but their deaths are not humanity's fault. Their deaths are the direct result of Resolution 4471. The Council voted that you did not need human emergency services. You were wrong, tragically, catastrophically wrong, and now you are learning that lesson in the worst possible way." The connection ended. Brent sat alone in his office while the countdown continued. The Vrelin Navy worked desperately. They managed to evacuate another 3 million people in the final hours. New ships arrived from neighboring systems to help. Private vessels pitched in. Everyone did everything possible. It was not enough. The solar flare hit Green Hello exactly when predicted. 9 million people were still on the surface. Some huddled in shelters that could not protect them. Others stood outside watching the sky turn orange and red, knowing death approached and there was nowhere to run. The radiation wave swept across the planet in 40 minutes. Communications went silent. Sensors detected massive atmospheric disruption. When it cleared, Green Hello was a dead world. The Council held an emergency session. Nobody made speeches. Nobody blamed anyone else. They just sat in silence, staring at the casualty numbers displayed on every screen. 9 million dead. The worst disaster in Council history, completely preventable, entirely their own fault. Ambassador David Cross appeared on the communication screen. He had not been invited. He came anyway. His message was simple. "The United Nations grieves with you. We extend our deepest sympathies to the families and survivors. If you require humanitarian assistance for the refugees, we are prepared to help. But we will not resume emergency operations in Council space while Resolution 4471 remains in effect. That is your decision to make." The screen went dark. The Council sat in silence. Outside, the protests grew larger and angrier. The economic collapse started quietly, like a crack spreading through ice. At first, nobody noticed. Then everything shattered at once. Insurance companies made the first move. A gathering of major insurers met on the neutral station Crosspoint to discuss the new risk environment. Representatives from 30 different companies reviewed actuarial data that painted a nightmare scenario. Pre-withdrawal, our emergency rescue coverage cost averaged 40 credits per 1,000 insured, explained the Talvery insurance executive. Human response times kept casualties minimal. Claims were predictable. Now we are looking at response times 10 times longer, casualties 50 times higher. Our models show we cannot sustain current premium rates. The executive from Corinth Mutual nodded agreement. We lost 8 billion credits on Green Hello alone. One disaster wiped out 5 years of profits. We either raise premiums or stop covering emergency situations entirely. They raised premiums. Within 2 weeks, insurance costs across Council space increased between 400 and 600%. Small businesses could not afford the new rates. They dropped coverage or closed entirely. Families chose between insurance and food. Most chose food. The shipping industry felt the impact immediately. Cargo vessels refused to enter regions without guaranteed rescue coverage. Why risk a ship worth millions when engine failure meant waiting days for help? Trade routes that operated for centuries went silent. Goods stopped flowing. Prices increased on everything. Tourist stations watched their visitor numbers drop 70% in 6 weeks. Families would not vacation in areas where a medical emergency meant death. Resort operators laid off workers. Entertainment facilities shut down. Entire economies built on tourism collapsed. Medical facilities faced critical shortages. Human emergency medical teams always filled gaps during crisis situations. They treated overflow patients. They provided specialist care. They responded to outbreaks. Now those teams were gone and local hospitals could not handle the load. Death rates from treatable conditions increased across council space. Scientific outposts in dangerous locations began evacuating. Research into exotic phenomena required working in hazardous environments. Researchers accepted those risks when human rescue teams could reach them in hours. Without that safety net, the risk became unacceptable. Decades of research projects shut down overnight. The economic data told a story of systemic failure. Council GDP dropped 8% in the first month, 12% by month 2, 15% by month 3. Economists projected 20% decline within 6 months if conditions did not improve. Meanwhile, human-controlled space experienced unprecedented growth. Businesses relocated to Earth-protected zones. Skilled workers migrated toward safety. Trade flourished in regions where emergency services actually functioned. Tourism boomed at human-managed stations where families felt secure. The population shift accelerated. Entire communities packed up and moved. The Talvery colony at Deneb Prime voted to request human protectorate status. 3 Corinth manufacturing planets applied for economic integration with Earth markets. The Vrelin Mining Consortium signed exclusive trade agreements with human corporations. Some council loyalists called it economic warfare. David Cross called it consequences. "We are not attacking the council economy," he explained during a rare press conference. "We are simply doing what we always did, protecting our people and our allies. If council citizens feel safer in human space, that reflects poorly on council governance, not on Earth." The financial markets reflected the changing reality. Council currency values dropped steadily against the Earth credit. Investors moved assets toward human-backed securities. Stock exchanges in council space saw massive sell-offs. Panic selling became routine. Corporate headquarters began relocating to human territory. First the small companies seeking stability, then medium-sized operations wanting better infrastructure. Finally, major corporations recognized the trend and moved before they lost competitive advantage. The Vrelin Technology Consortium announced they were moving their primary manufacturing facilities to human-protected space. This shocked the council because the Vrelin were among the strongest supporters of Resolution 4471. Their official statement was diplomatic but clear. "We must prioritize the safety of our workers and the reliability of our operations. Current conditions in council space do not meet our security requirements. We hope this situation improves, but we cannot wait and risk our business." Unemployment across council space reached levels not seen in 200 years. The service industry collapsed. Manufacturing declined. Agriculture suffered as transport became unreliable. Governments struggled to provide basic services while tax revenues plummeted. The Corinth suffered the worst losses. They were among the loudest voices demanding human authority be removed. Now their colony at Esperance suffered a containment breach at an antimatter storage facility. The council emergency team arrived 5 days late. The explosion destroyed the entire settlement. 40,000 Corinth died along with the economic heart of their species. Their government fell 2 weeks later. The new administration immediately began negotiating with Earth for protection agreements. Council Chair Oral held emergency economic summits every week. Each one proposed new solutions: subsidies for insurance companies, tax breaks for businesses that stayed, investment in emergency response infrastructure. Nothing worked. Money could not buy experience. Subsidies could not replace competence. Tax breaks meant nothing when people were dying. Counselor Brent presented data showing the council needed at minimum 15 years to build emergency response capability matching what humans provided. 15 years of training, 15 years of infrastructure development, 15 years of trial and error and learning from mistakes. The council did not have 15 years. Citizens were leaving now. Businesses were relocating now. The economic death spiral was happening now. Some council members proposed hiring human private contractors. David Cross shut that down immediately. Human emergency services are not for sale. They are a public service provided by the United Nations to our citizens and formal allies. We do not send our people into danger for profit. If the council wants human emergency protection, there is only one path: formal alliance with mutual obligations. We do not work for you. We work with you. Or we do not work at all. That offer was unacceptable to most council members. Alliance with Earth meant accepting human influence in council politics. It meant admitting they needed humanity more than humanity needed them. It meant surrendering the pride that motivated Resolution 4471 in the first place. So the economic collapse continued. Every day brought new business closures. Every week showed declining indicators. Every month demonstrated that the council could not function without the infrastructure they took for granted for 50 years. Brent watched the numbers and felt despair. His own species was hemorrhaging population to human space. His government faced pressure to withdraw from the council entirely and seek Earth's protection. Other species faced similar pressures. He sent another message to David Cross. You are watching the council destroy itself. Does that satisfy you? The response came quickly. We take no satisfaction in your suffering, but we will not save you from your own decisions. You wanted independence from human influence. You have it. What you do with it is your choice. Outside council headquarters, the protests never stopped. People demanded action. They demanded leadership. They demanded someone fix the problems killing their economy and their future. The council had no answers, only pride in policies that caused the disaster. 7 months after the withdrawal, reality delivered another lesson. This one threatened the council's very existence. The Siberian Gate was not natural. Ancient civilizations built it 30,000 years ago, though nobody knew which ones. The massive structure created a stable wormhole connecting 40 star systems to the galactic core. Trillions of beings depended on it for transportation, trade, and communication. The gate operated on principles modern science barely understood. Exotic matter contained in quantum fields generated a controlled spatial distortion. Sophisticated systems maintained perfect balance between forces that should have torn reality apart. Those systems required constant maintenance and occasional adjustment. Humans maintained the Siberian Gate for 43 years. Their engineers studied the ancient technology and developed expertise nobody else possessed. They made thousands of tiny adjustments that kept the quantum field stable. They monitored fluctuations and corrected problems before they became critical. They understood the gate better than anyone. When humans withdrew, they transferred all maintenance data to council authorities. Complete manuals, detailed procedures, everything needed to keep the gate operational. What they could not transfer was experience and judgment. The council assigned their best engineers to gate maintenance, brilliant scientists with advanced degrees. They studied the manuals carefully. They followed procedures precisely. They did everything correctly. It was not enough. The quantum fields began showing unusual fluctuations 3 weeks after humans left. Nothing dramatic, just small variations from normal parameters. The council engineers noticed but saw no cause for concern. The fluctuations fell within acceptable ranges according to the documentation. Human engineers would have recognized the pattern. They saw similar fluctuations 20 years ago and corrected them before they cascaded. The pattern meant something deep in the exotic matter containment was shifting. It needed adjustment now, before the shift became critical. Nobody on the council team recognized the pattern. They kept monitoring. The fluctuations increased. By month 6, the variations exceeded safe parameters. The engineering team tried corrections based on the manuals. Some worked temporarily. Others made things worse. They were treating symptoms without understanding the underlying cause. One engineer suggested contacting Earth for consultation. The council leadership refused. Asking humans for help meant admitting failure. Pride had already cost millions of lives. Apparently, it could cost more. The containment fields began failing in cascade. Once the process started, it accelerated. Energy readings spiked. Spatial distortions appeared around the gate structure. Ships in the area detected gravitational anomalies. Evacuation orders went out. Council engineers worked desperately to stabilize the system. They tried every procedure in the manuals. They attempted combinations of adjustments. Nothing stopped the cascade. The exotic matter containment was collapsing, and they had no idea how to fix it. The final assessment came from the lead engineer, a crystalline being named Pax who specialized in quantum mechanics. The gate will collapse completely in 48 hours. When it does, 40 systems lose their primary connection to the galactic core. Trillions of beings will be isolated. The economic impact will be catastrophic. We need human engineers immediately. Council Chair Oral convened an emergency session. Every delegate understood the implications. The Sebarian Gate was critical infrastructure. Its loss would devastate galactic civilization. But asking humans for help meant admitting Resolution 4471 was a catastrophic mistake. Some delegates argued they should beg. Others insisted they should offer payment. A few suggested demanding human help as a moral obligation. Nobody had good options. Oral sent an official communication to Earth. The message was formal and carefully worded. The Galactic Council requests emergency technical assistance with critical infrastructure maintenance. We are prepared to offer substantial financial compensation for services rendered. David Cross appeared on screen from his office in Geneva. He looked older. 7 months of watching preventable disasters had aged him. Council Chair, I reviewed your request. Unfortunately, Resolution 4471 explicitly prohibits human emergency operations in Council space. Sending our engineers would violate your own laws. This is different. This is consultation, not emergency response. The Sebarian Gate is experiencing critical failure. Human engineers would need emergency authority to work on it. That authority was removed by Resolution 4471. We cannot help you. Oral's mandibles clicked rapidly. We are offering to pay. Name your price. Human emergency services are not for sale. They never were. You could have had our help for free as partners and allies. You chose to remove our authority instead. Now you face the consequences. Oral stood from his seat, his ceremonial robes shifting through angry colors. 40 systems will be cut off, trillions of lives affected. You would allow that over politics. David's expression hardened. Do not lecture me about lives, Council Chair. You allowed 9 million people to die at Greenhollow over politics. You let thousands die at Tally's Gate over politics. You watched the council economy collapse over politics. Every disaster you faced was preventable. Every death was avoidable. And every time we offered solutions, you refused because accepting human help threatened your pride. What do you want? An apology. We apologize. We were wrong. Now help us. I want nothing from you. That is the point you still do not understand. Earth does not need the Council. We are thriving. Our people are safe. Our economy is strong. Our allies are protected. We built all of that while you were busy trying to diminish our influence. Now you are learning that you needed us far more than we needed you." Counselor Brent stood up. "Ambassador Cross, I understand your anger. The Council treated humanity poorly. We made terrible decisions. But the people who will suffer from the gate collapse are not responsible for those decisions. They are innocent civilians who relied on their government to protect them. That government failed. Punishing them accomplishes nothing." David's expression softened slightly. "Counselor Brent, you voted against Resolution 4471. You warned everyone this would happen. You have my respect, but I cannot help you. If I send human engineers to fix the Sibarian Gate, the Council learns that enough suffering will make humans ignore your laws. You never face real consequences. You never build the competence you should have maintained. The cycle continues." Oral interrupted. "You are not teaching us a lesson. You are condemning trillions to isolation." "No, Council Chair. You condemned them. You passed Resolution 4471. You dismantled the partnership that kept the galaxy safe. You made these choices. Now you live with them." The communication ended. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Some delegates screamed for war against Earth. Others demanded immediate capitulation. Most just sat in shock, realizing they had no good options left. Counselor Brent approached Oral's podium. "We have 42 hours. Either we reverse Resolution 4471 completely and beg humanity's forgiveness, or we watch the gate collapse and accept responsibility for the consequences." Oral looked around the chamber at 800 species all facing disaster. His pride had brought them here. His fear of human influence created this crisis. He finally understood what David Cross meant about consequences. "Call an emergency vote," Oral said quietly. "Full reversal of Resolution 4471, and prepare a formal apology to Earth." Brent nodded and moved to execute the order. Outside, the countdown continued. 40 hours until the Sibarian Gate collapsed. 40 hours until the Council discovered whether humanity would accept their apology or let them face the darkness alone. The vote happened 36 hours before projected gate collapse. Every delegate present in the chamber, every species watching, the entire galaxy waiting to see if the Council would finally admit their mistake. Counselor Brent stood at the speaking platform. His forearms trembled slightly as he addressed the assembly. "We are here because of pride. 7 months ago, we feared human influence more than we valued human partnership. We passed Resolution 4471, believing we could replace what they provided. We were wrong." He gestured to the holographic displays showing disaster statistics. 23,000 dead at Hellion 7, 9 million at Green Hello, 40,000 at Esperance, hundreds of smaller incidents, tens of thousands more casualties, economic collapse affecting trillions, all of it preventable, all of it our fault. Some delegates looked away, others nodded in agreement, none interrupted. Now we face the Sibarian Gate crisis. If it collapses, 40 systems lose connection to the galactic core. We created this situation by dismissing the people who maintained that gate for 40 years. We created every crisis we face by assuming competence could replace experience and goodwill could be taken for granted. Brent's voice grew stronger. "I move for complete reversal of Resolution 4471. I move for formal apology to Earth and the United Nations. I move that we beg humanity to forgive our arrogance and restore the partnership we destroyed, not as employers, not as superiors, as equals who recognize we need each other." The chamber fell silent. Council Chair Oral stood slowly. His ceremonial robes hung heavy on his frame. He looked older than he had 7 months ago. "Counselor Brent is correct. I supported Resolution 4471. I believed limiting human authority protected Council independence. I was wrong. Catastrophically, tragically wrong. Every death weighs on my conscience. Every economic failure reflects my poor judgment. I failed you all. Oral looked directly at the camera transmitting to Earth. Ambassador Cross, if you are watching, know that I accept full responsibility. The Council acted from fear and pride. I acted from fear and pride. We took your dedication for granted. We repaid 50 years of service with suspicion and dismissal. We were wrong. I was wrong. He turned back to the Assembly. I support full reversal of Resolution 4471. I support formal apology. And if humanity refuses to help us after what we have done, I will accept that judgment. We earned it. The vote began. This time, nobody whispered in hallways. Nobody made backroom deals. They voted their conscience while the galaxy watched. The final count appeared on every screen. 847 species voted yes. 124 voted no. The rest abstained. Resolution 4471 was reversed. Humanity had full emergency authority restored. Now they just needed humanity to accept. The formal apology took 3 hours to draft. Lawyers argued over wording. Diplomats debated tone. Finally, Brent took the document away from everyone and rewrote it himself. To Ambassador David Cross and the United Nations of Earth, the Galactic Council formally apologizes for Resolution 4471 and all actions taken under its authority. We were wrong. We acted from fear rather than wisdom. We valued politics over lives. We took your partnership for granted and responded with suspicion instead of gratitude. We caused every disaster that followed. We accept full responsibility. We ask not for your forgiveness, as we do not deserve it. We ask only that you help the innocent people who trusted their government to protect them. They are blameless. We are not. The message transmitted to Earth. Then everyone waited. David Cross reviewed the apology in his Geneva office. He sat alone, thinking about 7 months of preventable suffering, thinking about the miners who died at Hellion 7, the families lost at Greenhollow, the researchers who abandoned their life's work, the millions who fled to human space seeking safety their governments could not provide. He thought about the engineers who maintained the Sebarian Gate for 40 years. They taught council teams everything they knew. They prepared thorough documentation. They offered continued support. The council dismissed them anyway. Now that gate was failing, and only those same engineers could fix it. David composed his response carefully. The United Nations acknowledges the Council's apology. We will dispatch engineering teams to stabilize the Sebarian Gate immediately. However, we will not resume comprehensive emergency services in Council space under previous arrangements. He paused, considering his next words. The partnership we had was broken not by one resolution, but by decades of taking it for granted. Earth provided services freely because we believed in cooperation. The Council accepted those services while simultaneously fearing our influence. That dynamic was unhealthy for everyone. Moving forward, we offer a new framework. Bilateral agreements with individual species who wish human emergency protection. Each agreement negotiated separately. Each one built on mutual respect and clear expectations. We will not operate under Council authority. We will operate as independent partners with species that choose partnership. The response transmitted to Council headquarters. Councillor Brent read it and understood immediately. Humans would not come back as servants. They would not operate at the Council's direction. They would work with allies they chose on terms they set. The Council session reconvened. Delegates debated the proposal. Some called it reasonable. Others called it manipulation. Most just wanted the crisis solved. We accept Earth's terms, Oral announced. We have no leverage to demand anything else. Individual species may negotiate bilateral agreements as they see fit. The Council will support those negotiations. 20 hours before gate collapse, human engineering ships arrived at Sebarian. The team leader was Chief Engineer Patricia Moore, who helped build the original maintenance protocols 40 years ago. She knew the gate better than anyone alive. Her team worked with quiet efficiency. They diagnosed the problem in 3 hours. The exotic matter containment had shifted exactly as they predicted it would. The fix required precise quantum field adjustments that only experienced engineers could perform. 15 hours of delicate work. No drama, no heroics, just competent professionals doing their jobs. The cascade stopped. The containment stabilized. The gate remained operational. Patricia sent a simple message to Geneva. Gate is stable. Recommend permanent monitoring station staffed by human engineers. We can train council personnel, but that will take years. Across council space, species began negotiating with Earth. The Tal'Vari were first, signing a comprehensive emergency protection agreement. The Corinth followed. Others joined steadily. Some species refused. They maintained independence and built their own capabilities. Earth respected that choice. 1 year later, Ambassador David Cross gave a speech at the New Earth Embassy on Mars. Representatives from 60 allied species attended. News services broadcast it across the galaxy. 50 years ago, humanity offered help because people needed help. We did not ask for payment or power. We just helped. The Council accepted that help while fearing what it meant. They worried we wanted influence. They were right. We did want influence, but not the kind they feared. He gestured to the diverse crowd. We wanted the influence that comes from competence, from reliability, from being people others can count on. That kind of influence cannot be taken away by votes or resolutions. It must be earned constantly through action. When the Council tried to remove our authority, we learned something important. We learned our value. We learned we did not need their permission to be who we are. We learned that sometimes walking away teaches more than staying. David smiled slightly. We are not the galaxy's servants. We are not the galaxy's saviors. We are partners who choose to help those who respect partnership. That is enough. That has always been enough. The speech ended. Outside, Earth and its allies built a future based on mutual respect. The Council learned to function without assumptions. Some species thrived. Others struggled. All of them learned that taking good things for granted ensures you lose them. And humanity learned that sometimes the best way to teach your value is to let others discover what life is like without you.